Ready to go?
Yeah.
You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the show. If you are enjoying this podcast, please share it. Send a postcard to your friends, share it on your bulletin board system or on your AOL alt podcasts group.
Okay, you're going real retro 2 episodes in a row now. What's happening?
Tell your friends, mention it on your blog or your own podcast, share us on social media, and please, the most important thing you can do is leave us a review on iTunes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that boosts us on the list and more people can find us.
This is episode 8, The Rock.
That is by far the best Gene Hackman impression yet.
You're not nice to me.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Dwayne Johnson does not appear in this film, and that made me want to go on a rampage.
Huh?
It literally says hold for applause in the script. We are going to discuss the entire plot of this 90s action
masterpiece.
So if you have not seen The Rock and are sensitive to spoilers, listen no further. The Rock was released on June 7, 1996. Wow. That makes me feel old. That's 22 years ago.
Oh, we've done older movies.
This is classic. By Hollywood Pictures and Don Simpson / Jerry Bruckheimer Films, which later became Jerry Bruckheimer Films after the passing of Don Simpson during the production of this movie. The end card has a little in honor of Don Simpson, which I thought was really nice.
Yep. The film was directed by Michael Bay. Love him or hate him. Mm-hmm. I still think his 93 Got Milk commercial was his best work.
Which one was that, the Aaron Burr one?
The Aaron Burr.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, that was him. And that was the kickoff of that entire campaign. That was the first Got Milk commercial.
Classic.
And it kicked off a national sensation
I still
of
see
marketing.
Yeah, people
campaigns.
are still doing parody stickers.
Yeah. I often, anytime I'm eating something with peanut butter, I'll just go, Aaron Burr!
I'm surprised they didn't reference it in Hamilton. That seems like a miss.
Yeah. It stars a million actors that you know either by name or by face. Among them, Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris, David Morse, Michael Biehn, Vanessa Marcil, William Forsythe, John C. McGinley, Tony Todd, Bokeem Woodbine, Gregory Sporlater, who is deliciously psychotic in this movie as Captain Fry. Just crazy pants. Raymond Cruz, Tuco from Breaking Bad. John Spencer. Jeff, is this show becoming 6 Degrees of the West Wing?
I didn't want to say
There's
that,
someone
but
in the West Wing in every episode that we do.
That's why I agreed to do this movie. Because
And Jeff, our favorite 90s rascal, Danny Nucci! I'm gonna never forget you!
there's another secret Titanic connection in this movie that I cannot wait to reveal to you in the third act. Well, hopefully it's in the third act. I don't know if you'll agree.
Yeah, it's probably my road to the cave.
The Rock was a box office success, grossing $335 million worldwide against a $75 million budget. But aside from an Oscar nomination for Best Sound, it was ignored by the major awards programs.
Womp womp. I enjoy it, regardless of numerous award snubs.
I was surprised how poorly I remembered this movie as I was
Really?
watching it again.
Did you see it in the theater?
I thought we saw it together in the theater. No?
Maybe.
Huh.
The first time I saw it was with my then girlfriend.
Who shall not be named. Shall we dive in?
We're going to cut that.
Yeah. Our story begins in the ordinary world, or world of common day, where we see our main character in his status quo normal life. Our hero, Marine Brigadier General Francis X. Hummel.
Excuse me? Are you pulling an American president on me right now?
I'm not. Although, after watching this movie, I think that Hummel has the more compelling journey, like in terms of his character shift. And it was like midnight last night when I was like, oh, I should totally do Hummel, but I ran out of time.
Yeah, he is a great villain because he's so sympathetic.
Yeah, you really believe in his cause from the start.
Yeah.
So we do open the film with Hummel, but I'm going to start with Stanley Goodspeed, who is a mild-mannered but very competent biological weapons expert for the FBI, and his girlfriend, Carla, is pregnant. We immediately love him because he's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And he makes crazy Rube Goldberg machines in his office and spends $600 on a Beatle LP.
Yep.
An alarm sounds, and Goodspeed is ushered into a glass control room. The FBI has recovered a box that contains a corrosive chemical bomb, In true Michael Bay, Bruckheimer fashion, we're going to introduce our characters in the middle of a crazy action scene.
Yeah.
So we see the clock is ticking. He defuses this bomb without losing his sense of humor. So we already see him as a hero, but only in the lab. And then in the next
we also see him very cool under pressure.
Yeah, he's
Just wanted
exactly.
to add that. So he's competent.
Yeah, he's competent. He's cool under pressure. In the next scene, we find out that his girlfriend, Carla, played by Vanessa Marcil of 90210 and Las Vegas fame, and is also from Indio, California. It's my homegirl.
You're from Indio?
Indio is in my county.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I think it's Riverside County, San Bernardino County. I don't know.
You don't know where you
I don't
live.
really know. She's from Southern California. Leave me alone. Carla's pregnant, and Stanley does not seem totally ready to be a dad yet.
It is a really great line of dialogue.
She tells him she's pregnant, and just seconds before, he said something about how it would be cruel to bring a child into this world.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm pregnant. And, oh, that's great. And then she says, a minute ago, you just said it was like cruel. And he said,
Well, gosh, kind of a lot's happened since then. Look, we're not even married.
gosh.
Kind of a lot's happened since then.
Exactly.
Such a great line of dialogue.
It's so great. I would do my Nicolas Cage, but I always sound like Owen Wilson.
And his and his delivery of that line is just impeccable. It's perfect.
He's perfect in this role. I like him in this action movie because he's not a typical action hero. In later films, he
Right.
got cast as like a legit, Indiana Jones action hero. And he's much better as a goofy fish out of water guy.
Right.
Who becomes the badass.
Right. And actually, the character of Stanley Goodspeed was written to be a gung-ho badass.
Oh, really?
And Nicolas Cage said he should be fish out of water, awkward.
That's great.
So that was his development of his own character. It's a good thing that Bay and Bruckheimer agreed with him.
It makes the movie work much better.
It sure does.
So, but that's not how the movie opens. There's another element of our ordinary world, which is the situation of the villain and the circumstances he's created that Stanley's about to be introduced to. So the movie opens not with our hero, but with Marine Brigadier General Francis X. Hummel, played by Ed Harris. He's a decorated war hero, and as he speaks to his dead wife at her gravesite, we learn that he's got an axe to grind with the powers that be.
Yeah.
Hummel and his gang of mutineers, who are elite Marines that have sort of defected with him for his cause, execute like a special ops raid on this naval weapons depot. They steal rockets loaded with VX gas, which is a powerful chemical weapon that comes in neon green marbles, roughly the size of racquetballs. During this op, one of the racquetball-sized things breaks, and one of the Marines dies a horrible, painful, skin-bubbling death. So we know, A, these guys mean business. They
Yep.
are ready to sacrifice. And B, VX gas is poison green marbles.
It is bad stuff.
Yeah.
Poison green marbles.
Poison green marbles. That's one element of the movie that I think almost makes it tongue-in-cheek. It's such a movie prop. Like the way these missiles are designed and these these green marbles of highly explosive gas, and the chip that you have to disable them with is inside. I mean, it's a horrible booby trap, right?
Right.
We're only at 14:20, and we've already seen 2 killer life and death action sequences. This is an adrenaline fest.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's the kinetic energy of this film is never ending.
I'm not a fan of Michael Bay. I think he is
Right.
style over substance all day long. I don't
Right.
think he cares so much about the story as he cares about the shots looking cool. And I think it was very effective as a commercial director for that reason. He was all about visual style. So the visuals in this movie are incredible. In the opening sequence, you've got, helicopters against the sunrise, straight out of Miss Saigon. There's fire and rain and explosions in the first 15 minutes of this movie. It's like we see fire, we see rain.
I will say that I pushed hard for us to do this film
Yeah.
because I love this movie and watch it probably once a year. But never with the amount of scrutiny that I have this time. And doing so really exposed all the warts that this film has. I may have ruined this movie for myself.
Anyway, I think this is still part of the ordinary world. Stop me if I'm murdering your sequence here. So still part of the...
I mean, we're this is like a 15-minute discussion on the world of Common Day.
Well, I mean, it's a 2-hour movie, and
Yeah.
because they're packing so much action into these sequences, any other movie, it would have been Stanley in the office, and then Womack calls, and he shows up. But we have to have poison gas and explosions in this movie. So Hummel and his mutineers are taking over Alcatraz. And one of the other things we learn about Hummel is that he's got this decent human being inside because he tries to get these kids off the island. He kneels down and says to these kids, tell your teacher you got to get back on the boat. So Hummel's mutineers take the tourist hostage. Choppers arrive, more Marines. They're setting up their equipment, which includes lots of guns, communication gear, and rockets loaded with VX gas.
Right.
Hendricks, played by John C. McGinley, who I cannot see without seeing Dr. Cox. So great. Sets up this particular booby trap. It's a really important thing that we have to know because we're going to face it later in the prison shower room, which they have identified in an unfortunate turn of phrase as a possible penetration point.
Oh!
How did no one in this...
Wait, that may have been completely intentional tongue-in-cheek by the writers.
It may have been, but it goes by so fast, right? So,
I never picked up on that.
I died when I watched it again. So...
Amazing.
We were just talking about the weak points of this movie. This leads me to one of the two weakest points in the script.
Okay.
And I was so bummed because I really wanted to love this movie again, and this scene was just... It's the worst kind of writing that exists.
Okay.
So Hummel delivers this pep speech to his Marines, and he compares them to the founding fathers, and they'll be remembered as patriots, blah, blah, blah. But then he launches into a totally implausible info dump exposition vomit. And he tells them all they'll all be paid $1 million, but they can never come back to the U.S. soil. Ask them if they can live with that. And they're, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, we're to understand that they signed up for this thing, committed grand larceny against the U.S. government, stole this gas, took hostages, and they didn't know what the job paid, and that they'd never be able to come back to the U.S.? Of course they knew that. And so this is one of those situations, the worst kind of exposition where it's characters telling each other something that they already know for the sake of the audience.
Right. I noted that, too, that it seemed like, wouldn't you have agreed to that first?
The reason why movies do that is because they're scared the audience won't understand. They're not trusting the audience, that we're going to pick up on his motivations for doing that. They won't leave it for later. That scene was totally unnecessary. You could have just breezed right by it. And I guarantee you one of the 400 writers that probably rewrote this script went, hey, we got to really make it clear. But so to me, that's the ordinary world. Goodspeed's a FBI biochemical engineer. Hummel's a Marine mutineer on a holy mission. Boom.
Wow, okay, so it's time for the drinking segment.
It's an ordeal.
That was an ordeal.
Do you disagree that all that is ordinary world?
No, I don't disagree at all.
Okay.
You said that fine. It's a huge chunk of the movie is setting up all of this.
There's so much plot in this movie. There's so many events that happen all throughout that it's really intense to try and fit them into one section and summarize them.
Yeah. Okay, so the second segment of the journey is the call to adventure, where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders him unable to continue living in the comfort of his ordinary world. I think this is going to be very simple and succinct compared to the world of common day.
Yeah, I only have a page and a half on the call.
Great! Stanley is at home having an intimate encounter with his girlfriend, and the FBI calls and informs him that he needs to go to San Francisco, be dressed and downstairs in 10 minutes. That's it.
Yeah. Well, there's a scene leading up to that explains to the audience and to the brass why Stanley's being called.
Yeah, you're talking about the Situation Room.
Yeah, Hummel calls Womack, the director of the FBI, played by Leo McGarry. Oops, I mean John Spencer. And then he assembles the Joint Chiefs in the sit room, and Hummel says, I have 81 hostages on Alcatraz. I have rockets loaded with VX gas pointed at San Francisco. You need to wire $100 million into this bank account, or I'm going to launch rockets.
Yep.
Hummel drives the plot of this movie, essentially. He's made this horrible thing happen, and so that's what leads Womack to call Stanley.
That's true. That is why, because Stanley is the FBI's chemical weapons expert, so he is called to action.
Right.
I see kind of a rolling call to adventure, actually, because Stanley thinks, first, this is just a training exercise. Of course, Carla freaks out. You're not going to San Francisco because I just told you I'm pregnant. We need to talk.
Right.
Because we're unmarried and I'm Catholic. This is a problem.
By the way, that scene is happening. Elton John's Rocket Man is playing in the background.
Is it?
Yeah, which pays off later.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's Rocket Man in the background.
Oh, that's cool. All right. He gets to the airport and meets Womack, and Womack explains what the situation is, and Stanley realizes this is not a training exercise. Then they get to San Francisco, and Stanley thinks, I'm just going to be explaining how to disable these rockets to the SEAL team. And Commander Anderson, played by Michael Biehn, says, no, you're coming with us. And I think both of those two moments are calls to adventure for Stanley based on his understanding of what is expected of him.
I agree.
So that's the call to adventure from my perspective. Do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Refusal of the call. Confronted with fear of the unknown, our hero refuses to go on the adventure. And sometimes the hero himself expresses this function, and sometimes the refusal happens from without. I see at least 2 refusals.
Yeah, me too.
And I keep bumping on this whole other entity that plays a part in the plot. So you've got Hummel versus Stanley Goodspeed, but all of these military decisions are being made too. And there are elements of the journey that happen between Womack and the Chief Justice and the brass and General Kramer. So after the call from Hummel, which is their call to adventure, Kramer and the brass immediately go into cover-up mode. How can we conceal this from the public? How can we develop contingency plans if they actually fire the rockets? We're not going to accept the call and pay him the money and make these military families whole. We're going to, we're going to reject that. And then, of course, there's the refusal expressed by Carla, who doesn't want Stanley to go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Doesn't even want him to leave. So she's a big element of the refusal there.
Yes.
And then you nailed the other one, which is after they get to San Francisco, Michael Biehn says, you're going on this. You have to go. And Stanley's like, no, I'm just here to help you plan. So to me, that's the refusal of the call.
I agree with that. There was another moment when Goodspeed is in the interrogation room with Womack and William Forsythe's character Paxton. Paxton goes in to try to talk to John Patrick Mason to try to get him to sign a pardon,
right,
and help the SEAL team infiltrate Alcatraz because he was formerly a prisoner there and successfully escaped.
Right.
And he's not successful. So Womack tells Goodspeed, you go in there and talk to him. And Goodspeed responds, I'm not qualified for that.
Right. That's not why I'm here.
Yeah. So I saw that as a little bit of a refusal.
Yep.
But it's the small one in comparison to him vomiting into the sink in the bathroom when he finds out he's going to Alcatraz Island in person. Supernatural aid or meeting with the mentor.
See, I think this is where we're going to crash.
I
hope not, but I think this is where it's going to go off the rails for me.
I think probably because I actually had a hard time with this segment.
Me too.
The mentor is Sean Connery's character.
Yep.
But we don't really see that relationship take form until later in the film.
Agree.
Stanley has to earn Mason's respect before he will really perform as the mentor.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of early moments, I think, in the interrogation room when Goodspeed is speaking with Mason. And Mason knows what he's doing. He's been in these situations before.
Right.
Goodspeed is obviously out of his element. When he comes in and introduces himself to Mason, he is awkward. He can't even, I'm stumbling now. He can't even figure out what he wants to say.
Yeah, he goes in and...
I'm an agent with the federal FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed.
But of course you are.
Of course you are.
But of course you are.
So yeah, that scene is his finest work in this movie. I think the thing that Nicolas Cage understood about the movie was that it was big. It was larger than life. And so he played that broad comedy in that scene. That's a very brave choice for an actor to make in a huge movie that's going to be a huge part of his career.
Right.
Especially if you're in a scene with Sean mother effing Connery.
Yes.
That's a movie star making moment.
Right. So it's in this scene that Mason teaches Goodspeed that he's not fit for the work that he's about to do. In a kind of a meta moment, Nicolas Cage said that Sean Connery served as a mentor to him as an actor on the set. Nicolas Cage was excited to work with Connery, and he said, you don't get on a movie with Sean Connery and not take full advantage of his experience and his knowledge about the craft.
I just wanted to point out a couple mentor moments.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the bowels of Alcatraz after Connery offs one of the mutineers with a knife. Mason tells Goodspeed,
You must never hesitate.
which is a really cheesy action movie line, and it pays off later, but there's a mentor moment.
Yeah.
And then there's another moment. At one point, Mason asks Stanley if he's ready, and Goodspeed says he'll do his best. And there's the iconic line where he says,
Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and the prom queen.
But I think the military guys serve as mentors as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain how.
Well, the brass, the Joint Chiefs, led by General Kramer, they guide Womack and the president as they make the executive decisions on how to deal with this terrorist threat. And that drives the plot in a big way. That sends those guys down that chute. Michael Biehn...
So you're casting a wide net here as far as mentors go.
Well, I feel like...
They're not mentors to Stanley Goodspeed.
If we don't discuss these machinations of the military-industrial complex, the movie makes no sense. I mean, this is what's driving... Stanley's just essentially following an assignment. And these are the people who are driving that assignment. So Michael Biehn is the one who says plan A is we send Navy SEALs to sneak into Alcatraz and disable the rockets without a shot fired, but they need a guide who knows the prison. That's why they get John Mason.
Yeah.
And of course, that's why Stanley Goodspeed gets wrapped in, because he's got to be there to defuse the bombs. So this is the other point in the script where I just wanted to tear my hair out, because we have to introduce who John Patrick Mason is. And so Womack and Chief Justice, a.k.a. Philip Baker Hall, who's another amazing actor who's in this movie, they go into this hallway and launch into a tennis match of terrible exposition, introducing Mason.
Does not exist.
He does exist. We just chose to forget him for 30 years. We locked him up and threw away the key.
Well, a lot of good it did us. He broke out of 2 maximum security prisons, and if he hits the streets...
He's not gonna hit the streets, Jim. 30 years ago, he was a highly trained SAS operative.
Well, here's something I know about Mason that you already know. Well, I already know it. They just, vomit all of this knowledge that both of them already know. It's a terrible, terrible scene that was unnecessary, because all of that information gets unfurled throughout the movie, and it would have been much more interesting to just not know who this guy is that Sean Connery's playing and have him be at that table. So that's another scene that I feel like the audience gets judged like we're stupid, like we're not going to keep up, and it just drives me nuts.
There is a piece of information that is delivered in that scene that pays off later, and maybe that's why it was delivered early. And that is the revelation that Mason was imprisoned because he stole information that is a threat to national security. The truth about the JFK assassination, the Roswell landing.
But that's not...
And he wouldn't give up the goods. He wouldn't tell them where he hid the film, so they threw him in prison forever.
Sure, I get that the information is vital, but the way it's introduced is just bad writing. They could have revealed that information in a much more interesting, compelling way.
You just hate fun.
I love fun, but I like good writing. I mean...
No, I agree with you. There are several info dumps, and that's one of them.
I mean, Die Hard does not contain a fraction of the info dumps in this movie. I'm done with my bitching. I'm sorry.
Okay. Crossing the first threshold. That's you.
Oh boy. We're going to have to cut out a lot of that talking I just did. Crossing the threshold, the hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. This is the hero demonstrating his commitment to taking on the adventure. This is more bad expo. William Forsythe says to Mason, "You escaped the rock." And he answers back, "Yes, successfully." Like, they had to say It's not enough that they're spelling it out. He had to say yes and successfully. Anyway, also Michael Bay does this really cool stuff in the scene with Mason where there's this quarter, right? And Paxton flips him the quarter.
Yep.
And it's like this macro shot in slow motion of the quarter spinning and hitting the floor. And it's a total ripoff of the pen thing from Silence of the Lambs. only instead of being subtle and cool like Jonathan Demme, it's look, audience, the quarter will become important. And then when he does use the quarter to etch a thing in the glass...
why is that necessary?
The glass doesn't even break along the edge of the quarter. The quarter was totally just I'm going to have a quarter in slow motion.
But why did...
It's worthless.
So you can break glass just by scratching it with a quarter and then smashing your elbow into
it?
It
doesn't even work that way. And so, first of all, why does Paxton even give Mason a quarter to call a lawyer? He's been wrongfully imprisoned for 30 years. They're not going to let him call a lawyer.
He was sticking it to him.
Right. And second of all, why do they not have a competent negotiator on the scene? They've pulled this guy out of prison. And then why is
See, the warts in this movie were exposed.
Why is the bioweapons expert at this interrogation at all? It doesn't even make sense that he's in the room. Anyway.
Well, because Womack had to pick him up at the airport, and they're like, "Hey,
stupidest thing.
Hey, on the way, we're gonna make a quick stop at this interrogation room."
This would not make it past draft 1. Anyway, Paxton fails to persuade Mason, and Womack sends in Stanley. And Womack sends in Stanley, who is woefully untrained for what's about to happen. So to me, the crossing is a threshold when Stanley walks into that interrogation room to face Mason. That's him taking on the adventure for which he is woefully unprepared. But
Right.
he's in it now.
Right.
You agree?
I agree.
Well, that was easy. All right. Well,
We talked about that successfully.
successful. Wait, why are we even here doing this podcast? Do I even need to be here? Where's our bioweapons expert to help us with the sound? All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll have Act 2. So, Dan, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you playing?
I just finished the audiobook of You Die When You Die by Angus Watson,
Wow.
and I loved it.
Wow.
Loved it. Jeff, you need to listen to this book, and I think you need to listen to it rather than read the text.
Who are you? Who have you become? This is the man sitting across from me who every time I would recommend an audiobook would say, it's not the same. You have to read it on the page. And now you're recommending an audiobook over?
Yeah, because, okay, this book, the style is as though Douglas Adams wrote an R-rated fantasy novel.
Wow.
And the narrator is a guy named Sean Barrett, who he's like a foul-mouthed Jim Dale. He was an amazing performer. The way he read this book was absolutely took the book to another level.
All right, I'm adding it to my Goodreads right
Add
now.
it to your Goodreads. The next time you get a credit,
I'm going to have one in a couple days. You
get
can hear me
that.
typing it right now. You die.
You Die When You Die, Angus Watson. It's book 1 of a series. I laughed out loud a lot. It was a fun story. Amazing. And I don't want to do any disservice to Angus Watson and his writing by comparing it to Douglas Adams. It's just that style of comedy.
I can't wait.
That's where I'm getting it.
I'm sold.
It's so fun. I can't wait. I've already got the second book on pre-order.
I've never seen you gush about a book like this since high school. This is on my TBR, done and done. And I read a lot of the books you blog about on Book Thump, and this one I'm like, that's clearly my next book.
Yeah, I haven't written. Book Thump has kind of gone stagnant for a while.
Well, you just posted something last weekend.
I did. What about you?
Well, I haven't watched anything besides Moonlight and The Rock. Oh, that's not true. I rewatched The Last Jedi with my son.
Okay.
And with both my children, actually. And I enjoyed it so much more the second time because some things emerged for me that I did not see upon first watching. Obviously, it's a controversial movie among Star Wars fans. But aside from the things that were controversial, what I got upon second watch was how anti-Star Wars this movie is and how anti-American culture it is, because there's this whole theme of leaders over heroes, which is not. The first Star Wars movie is find yourself, be a hero. And this was all about, Poe Dameron, you put everyone at risk instead of following orders. And if it weren't for the wiser powers that be making good strategic decisions, more lives would have been lost. I also really enjoyed Luke's scene with Yoda in a different way, where Yoda says, yes, you pass on what you've learned, but inside that knowledge is failure. It is shortcomings. You pass along all those things too, and those become part of you and part of the way you make decisions. And I found that really comforting and inspiring, whereas as an adult watching the original Star Wars trilogy, it feels very fantastic and over the top and untouchable that I'll ever be able to use the Force. And watching that scene with Yoda, I went, oh, wow, as an older person, that really made me feel more complete and less like I could never be a Jedi. More like you are a Jedi when you take responsibility for the ways that you've failed and you incorporate that into the way you live your life. I was moved by it in a way that I wasn't the first time I watched it. Books. Okay, so I am totally addicted to the Harry Bosch series, not just the TV show, which I'm still behind on.
I did start the second Harry Bosch novel.
Oh, you did?
The
Okay.
Black Ice.
So you're going in order.
I did that too. Oh, yeah.
I respect that. I'm going out of order. So I just finished Angel's Flight, which is number 6. It was late 90s. And it's about a prominent civil rights attorney gets murdered on the little trolley. There's a trolley in downtown LA that goes up this hill, and it's called Angel's Flight. And he gets murdered as a big case is about to be brought to court. And it drives the city into chaos, the likes of which we haven't seen since the 1992 Rodney King riots.
Wow.
And Bosch is at the center of this investigation, and his strings are being pulled by the deputy chief of police, and there's all this political pressure to solve the case, but the deputy chief of police wants it to be a cop who did it because that will satisfy and quell the population of the city, because then there'll be justice for this guy. So it was reliving the LA riots for me, remembering all the tension and the pressure and that explosion in the city. And of course, it's a great detective story.
Yeah.
And then I also read a memoir about schizophrenia called The Center Cannot Hold: My Journey Through Madness. And it's written by a psychotherapist named Ellen Sachs, who is also schizophrenic. And it was an incredible portrait of mental illness and the struggle to stay on meds and how it disfigured her life. But she still managed to get married and have a really successful academic career. So that was a really compelling read.
That's heavy.
It was very heavy.
You went from 2 light fluffies to lead pillow.
Well, I try to balance fun reads with more serious reads.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to try out a new segment on this podcast called Deal or Ordeal, because we find ourselves sort of bashing heads in the second act. So I thought it would be fun if we made a wager. Each of us will try to guess what the other person has pegged as the ordeal. So Dan and I have written down on index cards.
Okay, so wait, I can't even figure out what I want to be for the ordeal. Now I have to pick what you were going to say too?
Exactly.
This is terrible.
But I like it because I always feel like I'm torn between 2 segments. So this way I get to pick one and then I get to sort of like assign the other one to you, hedging my bet. So whoever gets it right gets to pick the next book or film we do on this podcast.
Okay.
We've written down what's on our cards, and after we do the ordeal at the end of Act 2, we will reveal who the winner is. Should we dive into Act 2?
Act 2. Act 2 begins with the road of trials, or tests allies and enemies. Having traversed the threshold, the hero makes allies, meets enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove his worthiness. Allies for Goodspeed. Part of what makes a movie like this and like Die Hard, episode 2, so effective as heroes' journeys are that allies are sparse, and they have to rely largely on themselves. Mm-hmm. That said, the SEAL team is for a brief period of time an ally. Mm-hmm. And for second and third acts, John Mason is, I think, Stanley's only ally, as well as expressing mentorship.
I agree with that.
Enemies, obviously, Brigadier General Francis X. Hummel and his squad of traitorous Marines are the enemies here. Tests. There's quite a few of them. They take up a huge chunk of this film.
We'll see about that.
But it's a long movie, so there's plenty of room for them. The first, I think, is the interrogation room. That's a pass, I think, although there's a lot of failure along the way. Goodspeed does convince Mason to
sign the pardon form.
To sign the pardon.
Agree.
The next test is the balcony haircut scene,
Yeah.
which is a failure because Goodspeed lets Mason escape. Following Mason's escape from the hotel, then there is a car chase.
Yes!
Through the streets of San Francisco.
I just wanted to dive in there and say another problem with this movie is that there's a motorcade of FBI agents, high-level people chasing down Mason, but it's Stanley Goodspeed, the chemical weapons expert, who tracks him down.
Yeah.
So I think we're meant to understand here that Goodspeed is just more dedicated than everyone else, or more committed to repairing his failure at letting them escape. But it's a little...
Yeah.
Look,
there's a moment where he takes a wrong turn and he goes through a garage or something, and there's a glass window in front of him. And he just goes, oh, well, why not? And he hits the gas and blasts through this window.
There's a lot of disbelief to suspend, but we're having a lot of fun.
But I think that moment shows he's a bit of a risk taker as well. So why don't you take a couple of tests?
Goodspeed finds Mason. He tracks him down, and that's a huge pass. And then the next big pass is that when he finds Mason, instead of apprehending him and dragging him off, it turns out that Mason escaped so he could reconnect with his daughter because he's been in prison her whole life.
Yeah.
And so there's this really tender scene between the daughter played by Claire Forlani and Sean Connery, where he's just clearly this awkward guy who's never known her. He's trying to reconnect with her, and Goodspeed gets what's going on. And so instead of, arresting him, he pretends that they're working together, that her father is helping them on a case.
Correct.
So he earns some trust. I have a couple more tests, or one more test.
Okay.
Back at HQ, Michael Biehn Commander Anderson, decides that Mason and Goodspeed both need to be with the SEAL team. They're no longer just being consultants. They're going to be with the SEAL team. And of course, Womack is pissed off because his arm is broken and he hates Mason and he knows he's going to escape. And Sean Connery has maybe the worst line in the movie.
So bad.
Womack, you're between the rock and a hard case.
Even Sean Connery, who has said maybe some of the worst tag one-liners in the James Bond series over decades, he can barely get this line out. He's just like, oh, this is terrible. There's another test. This is the introduction of our favorite person, which is Bean asks Goodspeed, has he ever been in a combat situation? He says, define combat.
Yeah.
Cut to Danny Nucci. I'm going to never forget you. Defines combat. And this is not exactly a test, but it's a little bit of a refusal because Goodspeed is so upset and so scared of going on this mission that he goes into the bathroom and throws up.
Yeah.
And there's a little mentor because Paxton kind of goes in there and gives him a little pep speech. And I love, William Forsythe is always the heavy. He is always the good guy. He's on the right side, but he's kind of a badass and he's stoic. And seeing him try to comfort this weaker, you can just see he's like, I want to hate this guy for being a pencil neck, but I know I have to prop him up because we need him. That's why William Forsythe is in all these movies, because
Right.
he's not just one-dimensional. He's always got something that he's playing underneath that it's compelling.
Yeah.
And that's where I move to Approach to the Inmost Cave.
Ah, okay. All right, I've got a couple more tests, but they are obviously in Approach to the Inmost Cave. So let's move on to that. This is where I began my massive struggle with this movie.
Yeah.
Where does the approach start? But I think you're absolutely right to start the approach here.
Like you so eloquently put it in the last episode, to figure out where the approach is, you have to decide what the ordeal is.
Yeah.
And in this movie, there is a solid hour of people getting shot and things blowing up.
Right.
When you analyze a movie this way, you see some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses of the movie. And for me, this exposes the idea of this movie was, let's find some really cool situations where we can blow stuff up. There's so many signals of drama. It's hard to digest and figure out what really is the ordeal? What is the sword that needs to be seized? Because it's just, there's all these rockets in different parts of the island and they're just getting shot at. And then at some point it's over. And even when it's over, there's explosions that don't need to happen. So Approach to the Inmost Cave. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of his quest is hidden. So to me, this is Goodspeed and Mason, accompanied by the Navy SEALs. They set out for Alcatraz. This is the heart of darkness. This is where the bad stuff's going to happen. Mm-hmm. They make it through the incinerator from Tomb Raider. They get as far as the tunnel under the shower room, and then they trip that booby trap we talked about, that special light bulb with the special spring in it, and Hummel and his men descend, and they kill all the SEALs, including Danny Nucci. I'm gonna never forget you!
Poor Danny Nucci.
Right. I remembered this scene from A Few Good Men where the Marines are always making fun of the Navy guys. Whenever we need to go somewhere, you give us a ride.
Yeah.
And here again, even the most elite Navy SEAls are just mowed down by 4 Marines in 5 seconds.
Oh, no. There's a lot
more?
of Marines. Yeah.
Okay, more than that. But these are the most elite Navy guys there are.
Yeah. There's 2,000 something active Navy SEALs.
Wow.
So there's
only 2,000 in the whole. And yet
that stat actually came from a book about wine that I read recently, where they were comparing the number of people who ascend to the rank of Master Sommelier versus the people who ascend to Navy SEAL status.
Are there fewer
There are fewer Master Somms. There's 230 in the world.
Wow.
Anyway, continue.
I guess we know who would win in a wine fight. So then there's a big sort of info dump more about Mason. This is where we learn that he has all these American secrets on microfilm. So another part of the approach, we're in the depths of Alcatraz. The SEALs are dead, and Mason is like, I'm out of here.
Right.
And Goodspeed tries to persuade him to stay on mission, fails, points a gun at him, and of course Mason turns the gun around like, really?
Right.
We just learned that he's a spy, and he's, you're not gonna win.
Yeah.
The mutineers find them, and they start blowing things up.
Yeah, dropping firebombs into the tunnel system that they're hiding out in.
There's lots of fire and lots of explosions and lots of slow motion running and yelling. And that convinces Mason to change his mind. He realizes that he'll have to defeat the mutineers to get out, and if he's going to survive, he's probably better off with Goodspeed's help.
Yeah.
This is that moment. Mason delivers that line, winners go home and F the prom queen. And that's when Goodspeed says Carla was the prom queen. And
Right.
It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's a burn.
It's also foreshadowing.
Say more about that.
It's a direct reference to the line. It foreshadows that Goodspeed is going to be the winner.
Ah, yes,
Here.
I agree.
Also, he chambers around in his pistol,
Yes.
which I think is a physical, symbolic representation that he's ready. He's going to do this.
I have always wanted to chamber around in a pistol in a movie. Like, that is on my actor bucket list. Like, even if it's just the total non sequitur, like I'm just sitting there having coffee, I want to chamber around because it looks so badass when you do it. That's the end of The Approach.
Oh my God. We agree. We agree.
No way!
Yes. We agree.
High five. Give me a high five. Ow, that was terrible.
Well, we've got all this delicate equipment that we just
Yeah.
tried to lean over.
That was the
This
worst
is-
high
Here, let's-
five.
High five. Well, I'm a little freaked out here. So the ordeal. The hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome his worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. Mason and Goodspeed make it to the morgue. That's fitting, where the majority of these rockets are being stored by the Marines. They defeat the 2 Marines that are guarding the morgue. And this is where Mason has one of his mentor moments when he throws a knife into one of the Marines' throat and says, "You must never hesitate." With the 2 Marines defeated, Goodspeed now takes control of the situation where he has to disable the 12 rockets. And this is where we learn how these rockets are assembled, where he's got to first take off the shell, then he pulls out this cylinder in which is this really unstable, your poisonous green marbles configuration. And Goodspeed even acknowledges, "Oh, this is unstable.
This is the most
This is an
unstable
unstable
config- yeah.
configuration." And this is where he schools Mason on what VX poison gas does.
The second you don't respect this, it kills you.
And this is the first point in the movie where you see Mason look a little frightened.
Goodspeed's in his territory now.
Yes.
Poison gases, that's his expertise. No
Absolutely.
more running through tunnels and shooting people.
Right.
And you can see Mason gains respect for him.
Yes.
In this moment. Like, oh, this guy is an expert at something.
Right.
He's not a spy, but he knows what he's doing, and I need him.
And there's a little funny moment where one of the deceased Marines is laying on the floor and his leg is doing this nerve twitch thing.
Yeah.
And Goodspeed's like,
You've been around a lot of corpses. Is that normal?
Well, the feet thing?
Yeah, the feet thing.
Yeah, it happens.
I'm having kind of a hard time concentrating. Can you do something about it?
Well, like what? Kill him again?
he's like,
Listen, I'm just a biochemist. And most of the time, I work in a glass jar and lead a very uneventful life. I drive a Volvo, beige one. But what I'm dealing with here is one of the most deadly substances the Earth has ever known. So what do you say you cut me some friggin' slack?
and Mason gives Goodspeed this like nod, like,
Respect.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So now 12 of the rockets have been disabled. Goodspeed has removed the guidance chips. There's 3 more to go, and now they have to go find them.
Right.
So we'll end it there.
Reward seizing the sword. Having faced his worst fear, the hero seizes the object of his quest. So I see a physical reward and a spiritual symbolic reward here. This physical reward is those guidance chips.
Yep.
He's disabled the bulk of these weapons. That's a physical sword that he has.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's the sword.
That had to have been subconscious on your part.
It must have been. And the spiritual symbolic reward is the realization that Goodspeed and Mason can do this if they work as a team and if they self-sacrifice. There's
Yeah.
hope. They figured out 14 down.
12 down.
12 down. Math is, I'm a
You're
3 to go.
you're a writer, not a mathematician.
So that's the spiritual reward is we can do this. We're a team now.
Oh my God, you and I are lockstep. this
No
time.
way!
I can't believe this.
Unbelievable.
What a horrible episode to debut Deal or an Ordeal, because we've got the same one now.
Well, it's funny. This week was crazy for me, and I was just vomiting bullet points of plot points and trying to figure out. I changed my analysis drastically
Yeah.
last night, and then I changed it again drastically this morning. Like I just came to this.
I locked mine down, or finally I gave up at 12:30 this morning.
Wow.
I thought I need to go to bed.
Okay.
I struggled with it for 2 weeks.
All right. Well,
That's how hard this is.
on that note, we're going to take a break,
Yeah.
have a beverage,
Okay.
and when we come back, we'll bring you Act 3. Before we drink, should we reveal our deal or ordeals?
Yeah. I'm amazed at how you and I were in step.
So I just read Dan's card, and he wrote Fry and Darrow confront Hummel as the ordeal.
Wow. And you said Goodspeed and Mason pull Hummel out of the standoff with Fry.
So we both.
You know what? Let me say this. I picked that for you because that was my ordeal for 3 days. 3 days. I thought, no, that can't be it. That can't be it.
This is so bizarre. All right, so we both lose.
I'm freaked out.
Oh,
okay,
wow.
so who's going to pick the next?
I think we have to agree on it.
Let's go to the phones.
Oh, yeah, by the way, if you're listening and you have an idea of what we ought to do, send us a tweet.
Yeah, let's do this beverage break.
I can't wait. Okay, so Dan's got the bag.
Yep, the same bag we've used for 8 episodes now.
It is literally covered with beer and wine stains. And, all right, here we go.
It's not. It's impeccable. Yeah. I hope you're excited about this. Oh!
Mason
Aleworks.
Perfect.
Isn't that cool?
And it's a West Coast IPA, which is my favorite beer by far. I love it.
Cool.
Oh, and it's from San Diego.
Yeah, Mason Aleworks is based in Oceanside, San Marcos. They've got little labs everywhere down San Diego way.
And these are absolutely ice cold.
Freshy. Mason Aleworks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that is absolutely perfect. That is a perfect
West
Coast IPA.
That is light and citrusy, but the citrus isn't overwhelming like some IPA citrusy flavors are. This is a delicate, elegant, I will say.
My go-to is Ballast Point. Sculpin.
Okay.
That's like the beer that I can get in most places that have craft brewery.
I see that everywhere.
It's ubiquitous. Well, a big beer company just bought Ballast Point a couple of years ago, and that's why they just distributed it everywhere.
Okay.
And now they have, orange Sculpin and mango rat tail Sculpin. They have every kind of flavor. But this, I think, is superior to Sculpin. This is fantastic.
So I think we know now what Mason does after this film.
He makes beer in San Diego. All right, well, we're going to finish our Jambi IPA by Mason Aleworks.
Oh, man, that's good.
And we'll be back.
Act 3, The Road Back. The hero is pursued by vengeful forces that he disturbed when he seized the sword. An element of this in Campbell is the magic flight. There are 2 kinds of the magic flight. If the hero entered the inmost cave with permission and the blessing of the gods, he is aided in his escape. But if he snuck in and stole the sword, he is pursued by vengeful forces. It is the second of these that we are going to be discussing today.
Mm-hmm.
So when General Hummel realizes that the morgue team has not checked in, he sends the hounds.
Yeah.
And a squad of these Marines descends upon the morgue with locked and loaded rifles ready to destroy whatever is interrupting their plans.
Boom.
And Mason and Goodspeed barely escape the morgue.
Yeah, they jump into the Gringotts train and go right into the heart of...
Yeah, it's like the movie turns into Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom minecart scene.
Exactly what I had is like, first of all, that's the Gringotts train. And I believe the first Harry Potter book came out in 96. And then second of all, we haven't seen a minecart chase like that since Temple of Doom.
So the Marines pursue relentlessly Mason and Goodspeed. During this pursuit, Stanley is forced to kill for the first time.
Yeah.
That is the death of innocence moment for Stanley. And you can see it bothers him for 2.5 seconds. And then he's over it. But I think we're meant to feel like that was a big moment for Goodspeed. It didn't really translate very well, though.
I agree. The other thing about that moment that I love is they're setting it up so that Sean Connery's character, John Patrick Mason, is essentially James Bond.
I don't know if you listened to the same commentary I did, but that's exactly what Sean Connery told Michael Bay. He said, "I'm playing James Bond again."
Oh, that's great. Meanwhile, the Washington brass are mobilizing their countermeasure,
which is the thermite plasma, which is stronger than napalm and will burn the VX gas, which has been designed to resist napalm. The concern is that the thermite plasma is in an experimental phase.
Hummel threatens to kill a hostage. He gets on the radio
and
announces
poor
over
Poor Mr. Henderson.
Right. That's a tough role to play. You're a
Yeah.
civilian, now be weeping and sobbing for your life, take after take after take.
Yeah.
That's the kind of...
With no prompting
There's
from
no ramp.
the hostage taker. Hummel says, I've got a hostage and I'm going to kill him if you don't bring me my 12 guidance chips. And then he puts the microphone in front of Henderson's face and he says, speak up.
Yeah.
And the actor's like, like, what do you say? Like, hi, everybody. And then finally Hummel prompts him, like, tell him your name. Okay, fine. I wonder.
Yeah.
I found myself thinking that was a mistake. Like, Ed Harris was supposed to say to that actor, like, in character, tell him your name, but he forgot.
Interesting.
And so the guy, like, just kind of covered for a minute
Interesting.
and just kind of whimpered into the microphone for a while.
That actor had the hardest job on set that day. I think Ed Harris probably took care of that guy on set and was like, I'm going to play with you a little bit.
Right.
I'm going to keep you off balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he threatens to kill a hostage unless Goodspeed and Mason return the guidance chips. So Mason takes the chips from Stanley, throws them on the floor and smashes them. And now we're like,
No going back.
Yep.
There's
it's
no
over.
going back. Mason he drew the line.
Yep.
And he said, okay, there's 3 rockets. You go find them and disable them. I'm going to delay Hummel.
And it's great
And
because...
give you as much time as I can, but this is probably the end for me.
Yeah.
That's the perspective that Mason has, I think, at that moment.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm probably walking into my own death right now. You go be the hero.
His training kicks in, the good of the many over the good of the few. Goodspeed's going to soften up and try to negotiate with Hummel. I've got to end this. So like you say, Mason goes off to surrender himself to buy time so that Goodspeed can find the other rockets.
Now, Goodspeed does find the 13th rocket, and he does remove the guidance chip, but he is assaulted by 2 Marines who sneak up on him. They toy with him like a cat with a mouse, but before they can capture him, Goodspeed does destroy that 13th guidance chip.
Yeah.
And then they capture him with the wonderful line, "You're lucky Hummel wants you alive, because I'd take pleasure in gutting you, boy."
Yeah.
Which is great because then immediately following
He's mocking
is a
the guy.
cut to Nicolas Cage in his prison cell mocking this guy.
I'll take pleasure in gutting you, boy.
Well, you skipped the face-off between Mason and Hummel, which happens right before.
Well, sure.
It's a great face-off because
Yes.
Sean Connery knows he's about to die and just says exactly what's on his mind, which is, I think you're an idiot, a lunatic. And, of course, Hummel isn't. We learn later he's a rational guy who he took a bad risk. He's essentially a decent person who was so infuriated by the military's treatment of his fallen comrades and their families that he lost his mind and just made a crazy decision.
He felt he had no other avenue. He had made pleas to the high command that were ignored. He made attempts to rectify the situation, which is under his command throughout his various years in military service. 83 Marine reconnaissance soldiers were killed in action and then just left on the battlefield to rot. They weren't even brought home for a military funeral. Their families weren't given any military benefits.
They were lied to about what
And
happened.
that is unacceptable to General Hummel as a soldier in the United States military. This is not how this country treats its fighting men and women.
In the very first scene when we see Hummel, there's this montage of sound effects and dialogue from Vietnam.
Yeah.
You can sense that this is weighing on him. And then he goes and says to his wife, please don't think less of me.
Right.
You get the feeling
And
that
he puts in a beautiful, I think, symbolic gesture, he lays his Congressional Medal of Honor on his wife's tombstone.
you get the feeling, or at least I got the feeling, that while his wife was alive, she was able to keep him placated. But now that she's gone, he's got nothing left, and he's just...
Either that or he was such an honorable man that he did not want to disappoint her in life. He knew that if he took this action, it would destroy her emotionally.
Either way, the one thing that really works about the script is that Hummel is a 3-dimensional human being. He's not just an evil bad guy. He's on a mission that he believes is justified.
100%.
We're still in road back. You want to take the next step?
We're still in the road back. So Mason and Goodspeed have been captured. They are locked in Alcatraz cells. And while Goodspeed has given up, he's just laying on the floor ranting about the hyper-masculine, I'm 16, mad at my father, teenage angst that these Marines have displayed so far. Mason is at work. He's creating a rope with torn bed sheets And why are there still bed sheets on this bed that's in a cell that's been empty for 60 years?
Why is the cell door locking mechanism still intact?
So anyway, Mason breaks them out.
Right.
They continue on their mission.
Right.
Except for the fact that Mason, he decides, no, you know what? I decided 60 years ago I wasn't going to die here. So I'm leaving again. So again, Mason breaks free. He's like, I'm out. This leaves Goodspeed on his own, and he chases after Mason. He tries to get him to, please don't stay. We need to complete this.
All right. I'll do it myself. I got 3 weeks weapons training. I'll kick the out of a platoon full of Marines. No problem.
It's a moment for Goodspeed where he probably realizes he's walking to his own death, but he's going to try anyway, which is a total hero moment.
I thought that part was a waste. I think it was holy crap, the third act is 50 minutes long. We have to add more drama. What if Mason walks away again? Because I don't buy that after his face-off with Hummel, he was all in. He had to defeat Hummel. So
right.
I thought that was a little bit of script skullduggery. The brass calls Hummel's bluff, and they say, we need another hour. Hummel's men are getting really impatient, and they're like, you got to launch that missile. So Hummel, acquiesces and says, okay, get to the roof and go launch that rocket. So Stanley's on his way to the roof to try and stop that launch because he knows that's where the next rocket is. And while he's on his way up there, a Marine accosts him and puts a gun to his head, and Mason saves him. But it's too late. Hummel gives the order, launches the first rocket. It's headed for the football stadium. And now the brass are freaking out.
Right.
Also, in 1996, computer screens project onto your face an exact image of the text that's on the screen, apparently. Because this guy's sitting at a computer screen, and it doesn't even match what's on his screen. It's like this green text projected across his face. And I'm going, no one expects to see that. Like, why is that even? That's some ridiculous convention ever. It's like you can see the digits on his face as though he were standing in front of a movie projector. This is the stupidest thing ever. Anyway.
Oh, movies.
At the last minute, Hummel steers it to go land in the ocean. His men are pissed.
Yes. Fry and Darrow are furious.
Yeah.
And they come to Hummel as vengeful forces. This is Hummel's road back.
Yeah, so Baxter tells him to back down. But, this is the other hole in this movie, is like Baxter and Hummel rely so much on, quote, military discipline. And Darrow's the one who says, I stopped being a soldier the moment we took hostages.
We became
We're
mercenaries.
And mercenaries get paid.
Right.
But we're jumping ahead of ourselves. So, meanwhile, the president orders an airstrike on Alcatraz.
Yeah, because the thermite plasma has now been confirmed. It's on the planes. We're ready to drop.
They think the missile failure was a mistake, and now they have to airstrike because Hummel's already demonstrated, in their opinion, that he's willing to blow up.
He's willing to strike. Yeah, and part of Fry's problem, Baxter says they don't know we missed on purpose.
Right.
And now Fry's like, oh, great. So it's not that we're gutless. We're incompetent.
Yeah.
And that escalates this whole face-off.
Yeah, so Hummel's men confront him. Hummel and Baxter try to quell the men, using military discipline, but they're not having it. And there's a standoff where everyone's holding the gun on everybody else.
Yeah,
and
it's like the Reservoir Dogs
exactly right
scene.
And a gunfight ensues, and Hummel gets shot.
Everybody gets shot.
Everybody gets shot. But Hummel...
Except Fry. He's the only one who escapes
that's
unscathed,
right.
But everybody else takes a bullet.
Yeah, Fry escapes. So Hummel gets shot, and Goodspeed and Mason are outside. They see this firefight happening. They rush in, they grab Hummel and drag him out, and they extract from him the location of the final rocket.
Yeah.
And
as Hummel realizes, he even says, oh my God, what have I done?
This could have been the tragedy of Brigadier General Francis X. Hummel. If you had told the story from his perspective,
right?
War hero versus the horrible, immoral bureaucracy of the U.S. military-industrial complex,
yeah,
and he dies for the cause.
If you remake this movie as Goodspeed and Mason as the villains,
yeah, as the stooges of the government,
Rock 2,
yeah, or The Rock,
or it'd be a side
remixed. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, they didn't, in my opinion. They didn't give enough time to Ed Harris's death. I wanted a close-up where he says, I'm sorry to his wife or something before he dies.
Don't you think that would have been a little too much? I think it went perfectly.
Dan.
That's how death happens.
Dan.
You get shot in the heart.
Dan, the gas
You
is
say you're-
made of neon green marbles.
That's how. Have you seen
shark-
VX poison gas and how it's conveyed, Jeff? Do you know that it's not in a neon green
The
marble?
shark was jumped in Act 1. If you're going to be an over-the-top action movie, you might as well give the villain, Ed Harris, a great death scene. It was not congruent with the rest of the aesthetic of the movie by any means. Nicolas Cage, in the end, is on his knees in slow motion holding up green flares.
Don't jump
give
ahead.
Ed Harris a death scene. That's all I'm saying. So Mason and Goodspeed, get the location of the last rocket. Take it from here, Dan.
So Mason delays Fry while Goodspeed runs to the lighthouse to disable the last rocket.
Yeah.
Captain Fry, on the other hand, is delaying Mason and telling Captain Darrow to go to the lighthouse. These two parties are in lockstep confrontation with one another.
Yeah.
Goodspeed gets to the lower lighthouse. He finds the last rocket, removes the guidance chip. Captain Darrow finds him. This is one of those warts of the movie that just so bothered me was Michael Bay telegraphs what's going to happen to Captain Darrow for 20 seconds. Whereas there's this low shot from the back of the rocket and you see Captain Darrow standing right in front of the rocket. And he and Goodspeed are on opposite ends and they're like threatening each other. And it's just this,
This is my problem with Michael Bay, is his inability to distinguish between A Few Good Men and an early 80s Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is zero. He does not have a grasp of the nuance, the stylistic nuance between those movies. He thinks he's making high drama and he's making a goofy action movie, and he doesn't care that it's incongruent. He just doesn't care. He wants to blow somebody out the window with a rocket, and nothing else matters. He has a certain disregard.
It was the telegraphing
maybe
of
even
it.
a contempt. He doesn't care what
Let that happen.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He's like, this is going to be fun. I'm going to blow the guy out the window with a rocket.
That is one of the warts that I discovered at doing this.
But it all pays off because
it?
there's the payoff from the Rocket Man plant from Act 1.
I guess.
And he says,
Listen, I think we got started off on the wrong foot. Stan Goodspeed, FBI. Let's talk music. Do you like the Elton John song Rocket Man?
I don't like soft ass.
Oh, you know. Well, I only bring it up because it's you. You're the Rocket Man.
it's pretty awesome. He blows the guy out the window with a rocket.
And he flies out the window and he falls several stories onto a rusty, jagged fence post that's
now
sticking out of the...
Dan, what do I like when it happens? What do I like in the third act? I like it when the hero is doing all the right things and it only makes things worse.
Okay.
Because now the U.S. military is, that's it. He launched another rocket. Let's bomb the island. So Stanley, in order to kill one guy, talk about vengeful forces, now the whole might of the United States Air Force is coming for him. So in another...
And really, the military doesn't know that was the last rocket.
Right.
That's the second of 15 that Hummel has at his disposal. Right. They have no idea that it's just Captain Fry and whoever that sniper dude is.
Well, no, they don't know
that all the rockets have now been disabled.
Right, exactly right. They don't know what's left. So Stanley, for some reason, decides he's going to carry all of that VX gas to the roof of the lighthouse.
Up to the roof. He locks the door to the lighthouse so he's safe and secure. But no, I'm going to go to the roof.
While I'm running up the stairs.
Open air to put my head in full view of a sniper. Thank goodness John Mason decided to come back again.
Exactly. And save him
again. Like one of 10 rescues from without.
Right. Yeah, Rescue from Without is the subtitle of this movie. In any case, just as one of the Marines...
I still think this movie's fun.
I know. Just as one of the Marines is about to shoot Stanley, Mason saves him. Stanley jumps off the lighthouse. The airstrike is now 7 minutes away.
Because the last remaining Marine, Captain Fry, super psychopath, is gunning for him.
Right.
He has now found Goodspeed and is blasting bullets at him.
And now...
That's why he jumps off the roof.
After this crazy pursuit, we've been waiting for this the whole movie. Goodspeed, for some reason, has taken one of the magic green marbles and put it in his shirt, because that's not dangerous. And so after this gunfight wrestling match...
I'm going to engage in a fist fight.
Yeah, he shoves it in Fry's mouth, runs across the room, and injects himself right in like the upper liver with the atropine. It's nowhere near his heart.
Yeah.
In that shot, it's like hanging out of his stomach. And all I could think of was
boy.
Uma Thurman and Pulp Fiction. The airstrike is coming. Goodspeed lights the green flares, and we hear this audio flashback.
When he neutralizes the threat, we launch green flares and we wait for the cavalry.
Yeah, and so we hear Obi-Wan saying, "Light the green flares, Luke." And he runs outside in slow motion with the green flares lit, indicating that the threat's neutralized.
But Jim Caviezel doesn't know.
That's right. He doesn't know.
Jim Caviezel's coming to destroy Alcatraz Island.
Meanwhile, Carla is crying, and for some reason, Womack is holding her because that's just makes sense. They spot the green smoke and abort the airstrike, but it's too late.
Why? It takes 4 channels. The spotter's there with the binoculars. He calls green smoke. Somebody next to that guy has to call into his radio, green smoke, green smoke. That goes to the command center. The command center then has to say green smoke to somebody else, and then somebody else has to say green smoke to the pilots.
None of that is the reason why. The reason why is because Michael Bay wanted to blow up more shit, even though it's over. In any other movie, the planes would have veered off, but nope, we got to have one more explosion. Anyway, that's the end of the road back.
It adds to the tension of Jeff. The hero won the day. He defeated all the Marines. He disabled all the rockets, but he's still at risk.
Yes, he's at risk.
Tension,
of Michael Bay's
edge of your seat.
I did pay for my whole seat, but I only needed the edge.
Oh, God.
The next phase. Resurrection. The hero is purified by death, either in a literal or symbolic way, and returns to the land of the living, a changed person. The airstrike happens, but the cell house didn't get hit, so the hostages are safe, and
Because
Stanley...
only one pilot already dropped his
Right,
bombs.
thanks,
before
Jim
he got the
Caviezel.
mess- Yeah, good
Way
job.
to shank it. And here's my favorite part of the 1996 action thriller,
Wait,
The Rock.
We're only just now getting to your favorite
This
part.
is my favorite part.
There's been 45 favorite
Yes.
parts for me already. I want to hear what this is.
4 months before this movie was released, a little movie that you might remember called Titanic
Yes.
won Best Picture.
Okay.
When Mason jumps into the ocean to save Stanley Goodspeed from drowning, we hear the faint strains of a penny whistle. The very same penny whistle used in the 1994 Celine Dion classic, My Heart Will Go On.
No.
And Mason
No.
rescues
No.
him
No.
in a clear,
No.
homoerotic,
No.
romantic moment, bringing him up above the way Jack could have been saved because there was room on that door. Rose let him die, and Mason fixes it by
Oh my
saving
God.
him and
I can't.
and the penny whistle,
No.
and it's all complete. Thank you so much. Join us next
That's
month.
it for this episode.
Join us next month when we review
Oh my God.
Titanic. I'm done. I'm leaving.
Jeff has removed his headphones, is exiting the studio.
Oh, I laughed so hard when I heard that penny whistle.
Oh my God.
So the penny, and I watched it again. The penny whistle it only happens one other time in the score that I could detect, and that's during the father-daughter scene with Claire Forlani, but I didn't detect it the first time. So I'm watching this going, no way. And the melody is so similar, it's ridiculous.
That's that. I don't know if that was an homage.
I can't imagine
or if
that
the
it was.
penny whistle
I mean,
was just real big 1995, 1996 tool for film composers.
Yeah, who knows?
That's amazing. I don't know if you just ruined this movie for me or elevated it. Amazing. So we've got Goodspeed being pulled from the water. Here's our baptism. The hero being baptized. Stop.
Good point, though. It's a baptism.
So this is a physical, literal resurrection of Goodspeed, as he was unconscious and probably would have drowned in the ocean.
Right.
Had Mason not resurrected him. Following that, Goodspeed, I think I'm about to dip into the next segment, though. Maybe I need to stop.
Well, next segment's all yours.
Next segment is Freedom to Live, or Return with the Elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. After being pulled from the water, Goodspeed answers a radio call from Paxton and confirms that the threat has been neutralized. All of the hostages are safe. Mission accomplished. And Womack gets on the radio and says, "What about Mason?" And after a slight hesitation, Goodspeed says he's dead. This gives Mason freedom to live.
Well
Mason,
done, Daniel.
Where his hotel room is, and he says there's clothes in the closet, there's $200 in the Bible. Mason, in return, gives Goodspeed a piece of paper.
Yeah, and he says
on which he has written the location
yeah.
of the stolen
There's a
film.
rock. There's a rock wall in a certain field
No.
in Mississippi.
No, Jeff. Wrong.
And if you go
No,
there,
Jeff. There's no Buxton Hayfield.
Zihuatanejo.
No, Jeff.
Paxton's Hayfield. That's
The Paxton Hayfield.
Paxton. And so he goes and he finds
Here's my
the-
question.
he
Here's my
finds the-
question. Where did Mason get this piece of paper on which has he been carrying this the whole time?
That's what bothers you about this?
He has been in the water 3 times. Okay, if this piece of paper with this written information on it has been in his pocket the whole time. He's been in water 3 times, submerged. That ink hasn't bled.
I have a bigger problem with it.
If it's after he pulls Goodspeed from the water, which would make the most sense because that is the most recent time. Both of them have been in the ocean.
Right.
Then somehow he finds a piece of paper and a pencil and writes down the location of this Kansas church.
Also,
in which he's hidden the film.
Also, he speaks it out loud. So what's the paper for anyway? He literally says there's a church in this town in Kansas.
Okay, look.
First leg.
Look, Goodspeed has suffered a physical trauma, and maybe his memory.
So Dan, I'm not a church-going man, but I have been inside dozens and dozens of churches because I used to be in a boys' choir where I
Sounds like
sang
you
at
are
weddings.
a church-going man then.
I've never seen a pew that had a leg. Pews are benches that go all the way to the ground.
Right.
So I don't know what church he is where it's like a chair that has a leg.
How many Kansas churches have you been?
Ridiculous.
Have you been to the one in Fort Walton?
I have not.
Okay. Then
notice,
you've got no leg to stand on.
We never see the interior of that church because pews don't have f***ing legs. It's the worst writing ever.
Jeff, it's going to be okay.
Okay, so along with my favorite moment of the romance being consummated between Mason and Goodspeed underwater, my other favorite moment in this movie...
What?
My other favorite moment in this movie is when Goodspeed tells Womack face-to-face that he was vaporized, and he's like...
Vaporized? A body can vaporize?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, sir.
And Forsythe is standing there, and he's in on it. And it's another great layer of William Forsythe's acting, because you could have played that part straight where Forsythe bought it. It's not in the script explicitly. And it's such a great look where Forsythe, who was sort of like, not contemptuous, but like, oh, this guy's such a pencil pusher, like he's never going to make it. And he survived, and Forsythe's like, all right, cool. This guy not only survived, but he took control of the situation and pissed off Womack.
There is
respect.
Genuine respect now from Paxton toward Goodspeed. Goodspeed definitely won.
Yes, agreed.
Jeff, if you had a soggy, somehow not ink-bled piece of paper that told you to go to Fort Walton, Kansas, right leg of the third pew from the left or something like that,
right,
would you, in a completely conspicuous escape vehicle, an aged Ford with "just married" painted on the back window and strung cans dragging from the back, then go vandalize that church, steal the film, and as you're being pursued by the angry priest, speed off in this vehicle that the priest could completely easily describe to the police?
Right.
Come on. That was another glaring wart on this film that I don't think I ever noticed before. It was just like a yay, the hero won. Like now he knows all the now he knows all the national secrets.
Well, and then he was in National Treasure, so it all plays out. So did they get married in San Francisco and drive with the cans all the way to Kansas, or did they go to Kansas to elope? I think it's fair to say they were going for a Shawshank ending, and instead they just shanked the ending.
Whoa.
That's it for this episode. Join us next month when we will be paying our respects to The Godfather.
If you like what you heard, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you love what you heard, please leave us a rating in iTunes and leave us a review and tell your friends to listen.
Thanks to Taylor Jordan for our amazing Heroes Journey fanfare and bumper music. You can check him out at dramatics.net, and to Dean Ethington at DAE Design for our logo, and to Mason Aleworks of the San Diego area for this Zombie IPA. It is delicious. I'm going to take another sip right now.
The Rock is copyright 1996, Don Simpson Productions, Inc., Hollywood Pictures Company, and Jerry Bruckheimer, Inc.
We are proud to be a part of the 1888 Center family of podcasts. 1888 serves as a regional catalyst for the preservation, presentation, and promotion of cultural heritage and literary arts.
You can visit the Center's cafe, gallery, and bookshop physically in historic downtown Orange or online at 1888.center.
Please follow us on Twitter at Heroes Podcast. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Heroes Journey Podcast. And check out our hilarious and informative show notes at heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Until next time,
journey on.
You get to do it.
And they steal rockets loaded with VX gas. They steal rockets loaded with VX gas. And I have VX rocket. Wow.
You're having a really hard time saying VX
I really
rockets.
am.